Hello and welcome to On the Record, a debate-style television talk show where Bahamians will find the balanced, true and open debate they've been looking for. After just over a year of governance, Prime Minister Dr. the Honourable Hubert Minnis has shuffled his cabinet, affecting 4 ministries. The question is, why were these cabinet ministers shuffled? And we may never know the answer to that question, seeing that the Prime Minister offers no real reason for the shuffle. "I have faith in all my ministers," is what the Prime Minister said when asked why the ministries of Social Services, Transport and Agriculture and Youth and Sports were tossed up, shaken and rearranged. Are the FNM's favourite words accountability and transparency in operation in this instance? Well, you be the judge. Tonight, our topic is Minnis administration shuffling the deck. And our debaters are Queen's Counsel and former PLP candidate Wayne Munro, and attorney and MP for Tall Pines and Deputy Speaker of the House of Assembly, Don Saunders. It's all on the record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Our discussion begins on the other side of this break.
BDC Living is a collection of unique home decor stores in Nassau. We have stylish furniture and accessories to suit all tastes and budgets. Visit East Bay Street for unique furniture pieces and coastal accessories. Our West store in Old Fort Bay is home to design-focused gifts, accessories, and custom upholstery. The home store at AIP carries really useful household essentials. Check out our website, bdcliving.com, for location details.
Hi, I'm here to tell you about the fastest way to purchase the vehicle you want right from home.
With SBT Japan, we import used cars from Japan straight to you.
Car ownership doesn't have to be hard. Go to sbtjapan.com and sign up for free. Search for the car you want, place your order, and make a payment using any one of our convenient payment options. Once you pay the duty and tax to our in-house broker, we will clear the vehicle and even deliver it straight to your home. Sounds too easy? Well, shouldn't it be?
Welcome back to On the Record. The cabinet has been shuffled and 4 ministers have received new ministries. Our topic tonight is Minnis administration shuffling the deck. Our guests, Wayne Munro QC and Don Saunders, MP for Tall Pines and Deputy Speaker of the House of Assembly. Gentlemen, welcome to On the Record.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Joe.
Glad to have you with us. When asked this week about his rationale for the shuffle, the Prime Minister offered this explanation.
I will be relocating individuals, transferring. I'll be transferring individuals. There'll be quite a number of cabinet ministers who would be relocated to other ministries, and quite a number of permanent secretaries who would be relocated to other ministries. It gives individuals exposures and experience in all the different ministries. That's why I don't have any ministry. I have no ministry, so I can look at all and learn about all.
So you plan to do this every year then?
No, but ministers would be moved as I think is necessary to give them the necessary exposure. I have not lost faith in any cabinet minister.
How would you rate their track record of those who will be moving?
I think they've done very well. And I'm certain that they would carry that skill to whichever ministry they move to. My cabinet ministers have performed exceptionally well, and I'm sure they will continue to perform exceptionally well.
The Prime Minister, of course, speaking to members of the media this week on what has been probably one of the most talked about topics outside of the introduction of increased value-added tax, but we're not here to talk about that tonight. Gentlemen, the 4 ministers moved about. Lanisha Roll has been moved from Social Services to Ministry of Youth Sports and Culture, Renwood Wells, has been moved from Agriculture to the Ministry of Finance. Frankie Campbell has gone from Transport to Social Services, and Michael Pintard has moved from Youth, Sports and Culture to Agriculture and Fisheries. Don Saunders, I'm going to start with you. What is the general feeling within the party itself about these moves? Did you all see them coming? And when I say party, I'm talking about members, the parliamentarians, members within the House of Assembly like yourself, who don't sit around the cabinet table in general, or the hierarchy of the party. What was the general feeling about these moves, and was there any indication that they were coming?
Well, you know, as Jerome, you would know, and I think the public would be aware of the fact that the Prime Minister has the discretion to shuffle, if you use the term, his cabinet and to select whom he wished to serve in his cabinet. We've definitely had a very aggressive legislative agenda over the last several months, definitely over the last year. And the Prime Minister would have had an opportunity to reevaluate his cabinet and the individuals who serve in the cabinet. We as a team, I think we have the total faith in the Prime Minister and his decisions. Notwithstanding the fact it's only been a year, I think that it was a good idea for the Prime Minister to do what he did in terms of evaluating his cabinet. But what the Prime Minister said, if I could take two words from the clip you showed, that he has the right to do so, to paraphrase it. And secondly, he has confidence and he's happy with the performance of the cabinet ministers, notwithstanding the fact that he is relocating them in different ministries. And I think at the end of the day, I think the Bahamian people should simply not see this as any indication of those cabinet ministers' their performance, nor should they look at it in any way as if the party is in any issue, take issue with the way the country is being governed. I think it's healthy sometimes to reevaluate and to make changes in your cabinet. And I think that, yeah, that's going to give, as he said, those ministers opportunities to learn and understand other ministries that may be beneficial to those ministries and the country as a whole.
So my question, out of such a large cabinet, it would seem if you want to give ministers an opportunity to experience other ministries and to get their feet wet elsewhere, why just 4? If I were among those 4, I may feel a little strange as to why I was just singled out of the 4, out of so many other cabinet ministers. Any rationale as to why just those 4, or?
Well, you know, as you would see from, I know we're not going to talk about the budget, but there are various policies, new policies that the government intend to implement in this budgetary period, or I should say in the next 3 years, 4 years. The Prime Minister and his cabinet knows better what direction they want to see the country go in, and the different new policies and new initiatives that the government is going to put forward. And the Prime Minister, I would say, may have looked at these various ministries and saw where maybe this person fits better here, maybe this person fits better here. And again, he's expressed, and I think it was good that he expressed his confidence in those individuals. And I don't think any minister, not the ones that weren't relocated, I don't think they would feel any differently, and I don't think the 4 that were feel any differently. They're still a member of the cabinet. We know the system in the Bahamas where cabinet decisions, any government's major decision is made around the cabinet table, so they still have an opportunity. Frankie Campbell, the Honorable Frankie Campbell, still have an opportunity to give his input as to issues relating to transport and local government if he wishes around the cabinet table, and I'm sure his colleagues will respect his views. The new Minister of Transport and local government obviously would have the responsibility of carrying out the government policies, etc. But he would still have the opportunity to give his experience and his input as other ministers would have that opportunity. So I don't think it's a big issue. I think some persons, particularly the opposition, they take this as an opportunity to make something out of nothing, really. It happens every day. I just opened the papers the other day. The Canadian and Nova Scotia local parliament, they've shuffled. That's a new parliament. So there's nothing abnormal about it. I think it's actually a good idea that he's reevaluating the situation what we're in as a country and making the necessary moves. So I support the Prime Minister, and I ask Bahamians to just have faith, continue to have faith in his leadership.
Wayne Monroe, you would have heard your colleague here say that the opposition has made something out of nothing. There has been a very scathing review of the of the changes by the leader of the opposition? I want your take on it right now.
Well, Jerome, I cannot tell you because of my litigation schedule that I've seen anything than one release where the party takes issue with the most obvious ministry that's failed, which is social services. Listening to the Prime Minister's clip, there are some things that should disturb Bahamians in it. They are not his ministers. And when I hear a grown man taking ownership of other grown people coming from a history of slavery, it always causes me problems. Our system has the Prime Ministers first amongst equals. And clearly he does not think that his ministers are equal to him, and that's why he says they are his ministers and he can do what he wishes with them. It is also interesting that he says that shuffling gives them an opportunity to learn other things and be well-rounded, whereas he's the king dog in the run because he has oversight over everything. So whereas you can only look at one thing, I look at everything. So I'm much, much better than you. We are not equals. I'm superior, and you are my minister. We have shuffles in every country in our system, but the way that this Prime Minister looks at his colleagues as not being his equals is what is troubling to me. How do you evaluate, and the example given by the leader of the opposition, social services, where there have been people who have not been properly dealt with by social services, clearly because the minister did not make a good case for resources for her ministry. These people are not technocrats. When they were elected, they had no skills in transport, they had no skills in anything. They go to an apartment where they are policy makers. And so the fact that you are elected May 2017 and assigned to social services doesn't make you an expert at that. And you're supposed to be making government policy and evaluating things. And you should have very quickly said, look, this is a ministry where, with all of the other things you're doing, you're firing a bunch of people, you're putting a lot of people on the unemployment line. Social services needs to be a safety net because you're increasing the pain on your people.
The Lanisha role seems to be a hot button issue for the opposition. Now, not without cause. If we go back before election, you know, Lanisha Roll has been, she's been a controversial figure prior to the election.
And that is probably why Mr. Monroe, as a part of the PLP, maybe want to
jump.
So
you don't think what they're saying is justified?
No, of course not. I'm surprised. I'm surprised that Mr. Monroe would actually pick on Ms. Rule, as they have done. Based on, as you rightfully said, they've taken the opportunity in the past to do so, and let's just pick on Ms. Rule. There's nothing that the Prime Minister said or anything that was out there in the papers or anywhere else to suggest that Minister Rule was failing in her duties as Minister of Social Services. There's nothing the Prime Minister said or anything given out contributions in Parliament by his own team members in Parliament to suggest that the minister did anything wrong. In fact, her contribution to the budget demonstrated that she was on top of the game in the ministry, that there were various projects and programs implemented, that she was on top of the game in the ministry, and that I haven't seen anything, and I haven't heard any of his colleagues in his party address any deficiencies in Minister Rule. And the Prime Minister did not single her out in any way. She happens to be the Minister of Social Services. She happened to be one of the ministers that was shuffled, and there's nothing wrong with that. She's going to be able to take her experience. She's going to be able to take, as I said, her commitment to service to the Bahamian people to the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture. I think that's where she's going. So it's sad when the PLP could just continuously see Ms. Rule as someone that they could peg on and peg on and peg on, but with no justifications.
Go ahead. The simple thing is this. I don't care about the evaluation of the Prime Minister. The Bahamian people who are suffering don't care about the evaluation of the Prime Minister. They don't care about what's happening in Parliament. They care about what's happening in the street. The reality is, if a government takes a policy to fire, I think they say, 10,000 people, where we do not have anything other than short-term unemployment assistance from NIB, we must understand that as a matter of policy, we're increasing the burden on social services. And as a matter of policy, if we then don't increase the resources available to social services, we're going to cause a problem. Now, that's the one that the leader of the opposition pointed out in his press release.
Specifically, yeah.
But in transport is getting more shambolic than ever. Transport is the ministry concerned with making sure that things on the water are safe, that mail boats are properly
So now
provisioned.
you have a new minister there, Renwood Wells.
And he came from agriculture and did what exactly? There's this talk about they're going to take this experience for a whole year. They've been just talking about we were stuck with this, we're evaluating it, we can't understand what the PLP did for 5 years, we're just still trying to get to grips with it. You can say, I can say, I am beautiful. I can say I am sexy. People are going to want to have some palpable proof for it. There has been nothing new, creative, from a policy perspective, other than firing people, other than increasing taxes, that this government has done. So Peter Turnquest has done his job in putting up taxes, and they have done their job in deciding, firstly, they can fire a bunch of people without complying with the Employment Act, and then the Minister of Labor, when the web shops say, well, you know, just like you say you didn't need all these people, we don't need all these people, and the Minister of Labor jumps up and says, now I have a job to do. I can't permit you to make more than 30 people redundant without talking to me. But he wholly failed to do that last year. And so these are the sorts of things in terms of policy, because ministers are concerned with policy, that the people have a problem with. The PLP learned a hard lesson that it doesn't matter what the Prime Minister evaluates you at. It doesn't matter what you do. It matters what the people in the street want.
He has a very valid point there, because despite all what is said, if the Prime Minister is saying one thing and people are responding and feeling differently, there will be a disconnect come election time.
No, I agree. I mean, and he rightfully said the PLP got what it got because of that. But I think
I don't think the FNM is headed down the same road.
I think 1 year in the governance, I think certain things obviously needed to be done in terms of getting our fiscal house in order, and getting our social life in order. When I say social, I'm talking about crime, social services, as Mr. Monroe alluded to. And unfortunately, hard decisions had to be made. I don't know what Mr. Monroe speaks of when he speaks about the government not adhering to employment laws and so forth. Most of the issues that the opposition raised with regards to persons being released were persons who were on contracts. If you're on a 3 weeks contract, you're on a 3 weeks contract. If you're on a 52-week contract, you're on a 52 weeks contract. You can't see that. You cannot see it. You cannot go anywhere and say I was fired, etc. But I'm not going to go into that depth right now. But the point is though, that I think the Bahamian people would, if they really evaluate what we have done over the last year, right? We have introduced some new legislation, some new policies as it relates to the fiscal responsibility, as it relates to code of conducts and governance of parliamentarians and senior government officials, regards to how the government manages its debts and debt collection, etc., which I think will go a long way in causing the Bahamas not to find itself in the position that some other Caribbean countries have found themselves in, and to be able to say that our economy and our society will be a better place in the next 3-4 years because of the decisions. Obviously, these are not popular decisions. Obviously, we're going to get the backlash that Mr. Monroe speaks of, but at the end of the day, this FNM government has decided that we're going to do the right thing. We think it's at the right time, and we think that the Bahamian people in the next few years will see the benefit from it. And so, yes, we're going to get a little beating, and we accept that. But I'm happy though that at the end of the day, for example, in my constituency in Tall Pines, where we're going to now have
I hold Tall Pines. I give you time to talk about that. I take a break. We have to take a break right here, gentlemen. I give you time to talk about Tall Pines. I know you'll give a shout out to them. Gentlemen, our first break starts now. We're back right after this.
Every time I'm in the Bahamas, I use Rev Go Play. food. It's packing. Here he comes.
Yo.
Wait, Omar coming?
Boy, this Rev go play? Solid.
Rev, you and us together.
Welcome back to more On the Record. Our guests tonight, Don Saunders and Wayne Monroe. We are discussing the Minnis administration's shuffling of the deck, changes within the cabinet. As it stands, Renwood Wells, the new Minister of Transport and Local Government, said he always worked at the will and pleasure of the Prime Minister, so it took him only seconds to move from his former ministry to his new ministry. His attitude is that one should not make up their beds anywhere, but instead be ready to move at the drop of a dime. Is this the good mental picture to have in regards to governance? Once you are appointed, should you be ready to move at the pleasure of the Prime Minister?
Well, I think every minister understands that he serves at the pleasure of the Prime Minister. The point that Mr. Monroe made earlier, the Prime Minister says that his ministers, I think, again, I think it's a cheap jab at the Prime Minister, respectfully, Mr. Monroe. I think the Prime Minister, in the context of what he said, was saying that it's one of my ministers. But obviously, he's a Bahamian minister. And what Mr. Wells is saying is that I'm trying to do my job as best as I can in the ministry that I was in. But at any moment, the Prime Minister may very well will need me to serve somewhere else. And so what he's saying is that, in my view, he's saying that he kept his office in order. He made sure that the projects which he was working on were always organized and in a way that could be carried on by someone else by the drop of a dime. We don't want to be in a position where you have a fiasco where the former minister, example, with issues, various different issues that was left open, that was left, persons were very concerned and discussed about it, i.e. BAMSI, i.e. the issue in MyCal. So obviously, if Mr. Christie, the former Prime Minister, had made a shuffle, I wouldn't want to come in the ministry meeting that type of fiasco in place. I think Mr. Minister Wells is saying, listen, I go to work every day. These are the policies the government has in place. I'm going to work every day to make sure that these are accomplished. And if Frankie Campbell comes here tomorrow, if Alicia Rule comes here tomorrow, she's going to meet the House in order, that she's going to be able to continue on the government's plan, continue on a trajectory for success in that particular ministry. So yes, he's very right on what he's saying. And I think every minister in the government should have that attitude on a daily basis.
By comparison, a Perry Christie would not have moved around any of his cabinet ministers during his tenure and during the PLP's time under his leadership. A Lyndon Pinling, a Hubert Ingram would have moved cabinet ministers from time to time, and he was criticized for that move. When a minister sits in office for an entire term, does that not lend, or could that not lend to corruption in some ways? He has complete, absolute oversight over that ministry. Nobody's coming in behind him or her. And that was the criticism of the Christie administration by many.
Well, that is ill put, given the system. A minister does not have oversight. The person who is the accounting officer is the permanent secretary. The ministry is audited every year by the Auditor General, who in the Christie administration, people saw
I
as
understand that,
robust.
Mr. Monroe, but a minister will give direction for many things to happen within the ministry.
When you what you would be saying is that permanent secretary, civil servants aren't doing their job. In this country, especially in this administration, we don't adhere to our old values of people's names.
So you're saying it's the permanent secretaries who aren't doing their jobs, who are allowing the ministers to do as they like?
They are doing their job.
They are.
It's the same foolishness if they thief the VAT money to become the power to say nobody thief nothing and all of the rest of this nonsense. In BAMSI, it's very simple. Somebody signed off on it. You can't find the record. I'm not surprised, because if I signed off on it and I could slide it out, I would. And the minister has nothing to do with this. The reality of ministers as policymakers is this. When you sit down and you have a job, you structure short-term goals, medium-term goals, long-term goals. And as a policymaker, you aren't executing. You are setting policy, and you are then evaluating and keeping under review execution.
But you're also
by the civil
directing,
servants.
sir. I know personally ministers give directions for certain things to happen within their ministries.
There are statutory abilities for ministers to make decisions. So, for instance, the Minister of Transport can make certain decisions. When you come to evaluate them, as I do when I sue the government ministries every day, you see that there is a paper trail of some technocrat receiving the application, evaluating it, sometimes saying you don't have documents, sometimes giving a recommendation. Where you have issues and where you come for policy decisions is when a minister says, you've given me a recommendation. I will follow that because having read all the material, it makes sense. Sometimes the minister will say, I have seen this. We aren't going to follow your recommendation. For instance, this big man has a cheaper price, but for political reason, we want to give small people some work, and we're going to do that. That's the type of decision that ministers make at a policy level. This concept that people have that ministers go and are involved in execution from a very low level isn't actually accurate.
beg to differ, sir. I have been working as a journalist for many years, and I have seen ministers get very granular in their directions to what happens in a ministry, sometimes right down to who gets the contract to empty the garbage. But that's just my assertion. Anyway, let us move forward on that. Speaking of ministers, there was a lot of talk about leakage and serious confidential information from permanent secretaries allegedly loyal to the PLP. For example, the cabinet shuffle was tossed about on a pro-PLP electronic media long before it was made public. How can that be if an anti-FNM source high in the government is not issuing information? So it seems that government information is, or this possible cabinet shuffle and who's going where, has been leaked long before the Prime Minister or any official government source has given the information.
The reality, Jerome, is that, I mean, we could act as if we live in a utopian world, right? The reality is that people can be people, humans can be humans, and you have that type of behavior and attitude at the very highest level. And that is why, you know, governments, Prime Minister go down, act the way they act sometimes, because they know if they release certain information. I know we want to say we live in a democratic world and country and everybody should know everything, but there are sometimes there are repercussions for too much information in the wrong person's hands, etc. So yes, you might have had some leakage, and I think unfortunately we'll continue to have those type of leakages. I know you had alluded to the fact that whether or not other parliamentarians would have been known about the shuffle. I mean, like everybody else, we would have had gossip and let's say fake news or whatever out there. But you know, we take it for what it is. The reality is that the civil service needs to continue to have upgrading, needs to continue to be encouraged to exercise ethics, etc.
Which does not happen.
Well, I said they need to continue. We have to continue to
push that. You have to start something in order to continue it.
And I think the former Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham started that process, and he started something good for the civil service. Unfortunately, I don't think it's continued in the strength that it was going back in, but two administrations ago. But we have to focus on retraining, retooling our civil servants to understand the importance of their responsibilities and the repercussions of their failure to adhere to certain rules and regulations and expectations.
Mr. Monroe, whenever there is a change in government, there is always this hue and cry that people are moved or sent home because of political reasons. But in many countries, when a government or a leader comes to office, he puts in place those people who are loyal to him, who seek to carry out his policies, who are following the line that he has set. Whenever there is an attempt by any prime minister or government to do anything like that, we always claim political victimization. But the reality is, if I am loyal to the party and I'm hired in a senior position in government, and that party is out of office, there's nothing really to keep me to being loyal to the folks who have come in. And in many instances that happens. You have people who are loyal to a former government that's now in opposition. It creates an issue for the sitting government because there's frustration at the ministerial level, frustration at the highest levels of government when things are being mandated and not being carried out. And I'm using that in a broad context because it happens across the board. Every time there's a change in government, there is a period of time where prime ministers and even ministers complain they can't get anything done because their instructions aren't being carried out or they're being stonewalled.
Well, they should be sacked if they don't know the provisions of the public service orders. The minister, if I give my PS a directive and it's within my power to give him, and he doesn't carry it out, that's one of the singular reasons you can fire a permanent secretary.
So fire the permanent secretary if they aren't doing their jobs.
I would be very blunt about this. I do not like people deriding professional people when they act. I am satisfied that the public service, the civil service, by and large, does their job in accordance with the rules. They may not like the government that's in place, but they do their jobs. The system that causes you to be able to change the functionaries at that level operate in the U.S. They do not operate in any Commonwealth country, and for very good reason. We do not want a system where you do not have independent people checking fly-by-nighters. Now, the reality is you might have people, a lot of changes happen, from what I understand, in permanent secretaries. Because if I'm the minister, I go into a ministry, and me and you don't get along, one of us got to go. You got to go to another ministry. Or
I just want to make it clear, too, that I don't want to seem like we're just targeting the permanent secretaries. Because it's not just the permanent secretaries where this issue occurs. It's straight down the hierarchy.
And I think at all levels, I'll give you an example. The Punch breaks these things. Some of us are persuaded that they get their information at a very high level of the political directorate.
They do. I don't need to be persuaded.
The thing that people don't get, and why I don't know why the government doesn't finish, do the appointed day notice to the Freedom of Information Act. It was passed before the PLP left office, is this. If you have a secretary who typed something, she knows the content of it. If you have a cleaner who read it on the desk when she was cleaning, she knows the content of it. For myself, I don't have any issue with the public getting information that the public should have. That was supposedly celebrated towards the end of the Christie administration. If there is something that is in the public arena, the public has no problem, in my view, in getting it. In the public service, if you have a minister who says, I can't control these people, when I go in a business, I decide this is the plan for execution, and I am able to see at which point it fails. And if it fails, my brother, you have to go, or I have to go. You have to go, and that's my executive power saying, you didn't carry out your execution. And if I don't do that, then I have to go because it failed under me. And since I haven't terminated anyone, that means I'm taking responsibility for it. I am too tired of hearing people who have no management skills talking about they can't manage people to get things done.
Is that an indictment then on the ministers who will privately say sometimes I can't seem to get anything done in the ministry?
I think as Wayne is saying, I mean, I agree with him to some extent that, you know, you're the minister. At the end of the day, you're going to be held responsible. If your permanent secretary doesn't.
The permanent secretary and others. I just don't want us to think it's focus on the permanent secretary.
I understand that. But you are right, though. There are several individuals below the permanent secretary and assistant and deputy permanent secretary level that, in fact, as you said, may have been appointed by a particular government. And you might not be technically a political appointee, but you know
they are loyal to that government,
party,
yes.
And they know the only reason they got that job is because X, Y, Z.
And everyone else knows it.
And yes, when a new government, and they've been carrying out the wishes of that party, and when the new government comes in, a lot of them act as operatives and sharing information and do cause hiccups and problems in the ministries. And as Wayne rightfully says, as minister, you know what your government policies are. Get rid of them.
If you deal with them, though, then that presents another challenge because it now becomes political victimization, etc. So now it has a political connotation.
Bahamians have to come to the realization that when the government comes in, they have a policy, they have a plan. If you're gonna hinder the government's plans of bringing about the changes and the necessary growth of whatever they need in that particular ministry or department, and if you're not a team player in that, then you cannot. The government wants to move you, then you have to be moved or fired if necessary. Now, I know we can address it as political victimization. I would suggest that maybe there might be some persons might rightfully be able to say that, but I would put to you that in most cases, if not the vast majority of the cases, there are persons who are guilty of that, and when they are moved, they use that as an excuse because they say people know my political leanings. And I don't think any government, any minister in this particular government has wear the hat of victimizing people. I think all of us want behavior.
That's another show, man. You know, political victimization.
All of us.
That's a whole other show.
They want their ministry.
We got to go back to like 67.
They want the Bahamian people to see the benefits of this government. And I think, and our FNM has always been a government that we shy away from victimization. We want people working.
So I wouldn't suggest you take that just on. Gentlemen, we are going to take a break. We are at the point of another break. We'll pick up on that victimization thing right after this. Stay with us. We are in our second season of On the Record, and we thank you, our viewing audience, for allowing us into your homes every Thursday at 8 p.m. We value your opinion, and we want you to be a part of our discussions. So make sure you follow us on Facebook and Instagram and comment on our exciting topics. Remember, it's all on the record. We are back with more On the Record. We're discussing the minister administration's shuffling the deck. Our guests tonight, Don Saunders, Wayne Monroe. Very quickly, as we went into the break, we were talking about this whole issue of victimization. As a government comes to office now, ministers come to new ministries, you may see the need to move individuals or get rid of the non-performing, but it can come across very easily as victimization, political victimization or interference. How do you balance that? How do you make that politically correct when you have to make a decision within a ministry or a department to move someone and you know that it is going to create a political hot potato for you?
Well, what we refer to as political victimization would be squarely lay at the feet of this present administration, is you terminate people for no reason whatsoever. You don't give any reason. That's clearly victimization. You go through and you evaluate people for termination, and you talk about you're firing people on contract, but a whole lot of permanent and pensionable people get sent home. What is not political victimization, and it happens because you have the Public Service Board of Appeal, which is chaired by a judge, is if people truly are being obstructionists. How it works is the minister looks at the permanent secretary, then, Madam Permanent Secretary, my policies aren't being executed. If you're not disciplining anyone, it must be your fault. And so I'm going to deal with you. And each level of management looks down, and that is how they're held accountable. And they're held accountable because if you don't identify where the log jam is, then the level above you ascribes it to you, and you are fit for the punishment. And I'm satisfied that that happens because I've done a number of public service appeal matters before the Public Service Appeal Tribunal. Most of them aren't properly handled for any number of reasons. But political victimization is when I come to power and I just terminate people without any cause or fashion, and it can't be justified. The moving of public servants from one ministry to another ministry, sometimes through promotion, and that is just a natural course in people's career. These people are not political. They have a job. It is their job, and it is their career. And when you're permanent and pensionable, that means something, and only an idiot is going to endanger their permanent and pensionable job because they can't wait for 5 years.
No, I don't think. I think many times we label dismissal as victimization. We live in a small community. People know each other. People sometimes know your political swing, and because of that, you get terminated or you get transferred, and the first thing comes to your mind is because it's politically expedient, it's politically savvy to say it. I was victimized. Mm-hmm. The minister responsible for public service, Minister Roll, made it very clear that the government was going through a process of evaluating the civil service, looking where we need people, where we don't need people. Certain persons may have been terminated or moved based on the government's needs, etc. But I don't know of any persons who have been moved or terminated because of victimization. Some persons' contracts would have been expired. Some persons, the jobs would not have been made redundant, or the jobs were made redundant, etc. And there's a process in which a legal process in which the government must follow. Now, Mr. Monroe says he has cases in regards to the persons in that's fine. Right. So the process goes through the appeal, but you don't just say it's victimization because the government released.
Now, I have to say this, that even like in the case of a Ministry of Education where people were let go who weren't coming to work.
Coming to work, and they want contract, and they want like 52 weeks contract.
Let's move the discussion
forward. Then they go to their PLP former MP, and they can cry, and because the PLP needs something to say bad against F&M, they say that they're being victimized.
If you have somebody, and I listen to the Minister of Education, and he should be sacked for that. If I'm the minister, and you're telling me I have such a slack grasp on my ministry, then nobody is reporting to me that somebody ain't come to work for a month. A month.
He said that's how we met it.
No, a month.
He said that's how we met it, and he gave them an opportunity.
And
then he made a decision. He just said that the minister has to make a decision, right?
The
minister showed his decision-making, his management skills.
You travel along for months and months and months, and then this is the excuse that you come up with. And then some of these people who you say haven't been to work,
you fire them.
One or two of them came to me, and they say, look, Mr. Monroe, they will tell me where to go. And nobody came to tell me where to go. And I went over and over, and then after a while I stopped going. Some people are slack, and they should be fired in the ordinary course of things. But for an example, you don't fire somebody who is known to be a PLP because he ran for deputy leader from BAIC, and the post ain't redundant because you hire someone to fill the post. And that's what we're finding, and this government is trying to be clever and wait longer than a year to fill posts that they claim to be redundant. But we aren't fools. We will see that you claim you didn't need these people here, but 18 months later, you have people back in those same posts doing those same things.
No, maybe because you may have created a new agency, a new department, a new whatever, and at the time the job in that particular area he was or she wasn't necessary. But you create a new situation, and you might dress it up.
Let's get back on track now. We've dissected the public service quite a bit. I want though to talk to the 4 individual ministers and really assess their performances thus far. I want to start with Frankie Campbell, who now moves from transport to social services. Mr. Monroe, you would have spoke very disparagingly about his performance at transport, but why do you think it necessary, or Don asked you, why is it necessary to move him to social, or why do you think it was necessary to move him to social services?
You know, I cannot speak to the Prime Minister's decision.
Just from your assessment.
From my assessment, I think Minister Campbell was doing an awesome job at transport and local government. I know he was aggressively addressing the issue with regards to the taxi plate issue and so forth, because we know that was going on for years, and every government has kicked the ball down the field. He was aggressively addressing that, how we deal with these taxi plates, etc. The mailboat issue, I understand that he was aggressively addressing and putting order to how the mailboats are managed and so forth. I know that local government was moving in the right direction in terms of modernizing local government in the Family Islands. In fact, Minister Campbell was responsible for bringing in place the new local government committee, I don't know what the correct term is, but for Nassau, for New Providence. So we see the job that Minister Campbell was doing. I don't see how anyone can say that Minister Campbell wasn't moving in the right direction.
Okay. So what do you think he's going to bring to social services? You know, with the introduction of the increase in value-added tax, there is a concern that that is going to affect a larger group of individuals, and it may be that we will see more people turning to social services. Do you think the Prime Minister has put him there in anticipation of what could be happening at social services?
I mean, I don't think the Prime Minister has any less confidence in Mr. Campbell as he has in his role, but I think he must have seen it as a good move. And I think the same management skills and the same attitude that Minister Campbell had to transport, he's going to bring to social services so that he could address some of those issues that Mr. Munro is speaking about.
Let's move forward, though. Michael Pintard, sir, is moving from Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture to Agriculture and Fisheries. Your view?
Yeah, I declare bias. Michael is related to me.
Okay.
Which is what you should do. Which doesn't mean that I can't critique him. Again, I don't know, just as I didn't see any new policies at transport, any new policies at social service. You saw no new policies at youth and sport. And just a continuation of what they found in place, which is the PLP we say must have been good because you just continued what we were doing. Michael has a training I'm made to understand in agriculture. That doesn't mean that makes him a good Minister of Agriculture.
It gives him some insight, though. I mean, I would think
the problem is when you're a policymaker and you have some dyed-in-the-wool views, it may cause you to elevate your views over that of technocrats who have studied things.
The argument can be made too, though, but it will give you a better understanding. If you know the subject matter, you can have a conversation.
Well, that's the problem, because the conversation then is driven by your understanding. As I say, I don't know of any policies that were enacted or any new policies at youth and sport, but as I say, apart from raising taxes and firing people, there are no new policies in this government.
The Ministry of Youth and Sports,
Mr. Pintard should do a good job because he's a good Ragged Island man. He should fit in anywhere
so you give him a pass?
No, I don't give him a pass. I don't give him a pass. He should be a good. He should do a good job carrying on the PLP policies that the FNM met in place and have not changed one iota.
Obviously, my good friend Munro did not listen to both the midterm budget and the last budget. The Minister of Youth and Sports introduced and spoke about several new initiatives that the ministry was doing. Right, the Fresh Start program is going back in place. There were some initiatives for young persons getting involved in businesses, grants for businesses. There were several other initiatives being introduced. And again, we're looking at a government 12 months, 13 months in the office. I think if we were having this discussion 3 years into, 4 years into, and he's saying that new policies weren't introduced, then he might have an argument. But I think the ministers, particularly Ministry of Youth and Sports, he introduced and spoke to several initiatives, particularly, and he spoke to some in Grand Bahama, some in New Providence. The Minister of Transport, as I spoke to earlier, we have the local government introduction in New Providence, those policies, the new program he's put in place in terms of mailboats. So I don't know where Munro is, where he be when we be debating these things and when the ministers make a contribution.
In court.
But he needs but if he's in court, he should not be making statements that there's new initiatives.
The final minute I left for the end. Minister Lanisha Roll, I think since this announcement, even if you followed on social media, it seems her movement seems to be causing the most angst, even in the public. She's been heavily criticized, a major bone of contention, and there have been, reports coming out of the Ministry of Social Services that she's not gotten along with the staff. There have been many rumors of all kinds of things happening within that ministry. And she seems to be still at this point the minister who people are most concerned with in the movement of portfolios.
Let me say this, and I take a particular view, which is that I don't believe in disparaging people's character without good reason. I suspect that her ministry gets the main focus and will continue to get it, because as I say, there's no new policies. Coming and saying something that the PLP did, you're restarting because you stopped it, is not a new policy. Her ministry came under pressure because this government has decided to fire a bunch of people and increase taxes. It will continue to come under pressure as poor people's food budget increased by about $300, $400 a year, which is a lot if you make $210 a week. So at the end of the day, she had the unfortunate circumstance of being in a ministry that's put most under pressure by this government's only change in policy from the PLP government, which is firing people, increasing taxes.
I see Mr. Monroe continues on this ride about firing people and increasing taxes. I know we're not talking the budget, but if you look at what we've done in terms of the budget, in terms of breadbasket items, VAT and some other policies, where you will see the cost of living hopefully reducing in the next 2-3 years. I'm not going to argue on the fact that the particular ministry is a very serious ministry. It has responsibility of persons who need help. And I don't agree with the saying that Ms. Roll was seen as one of those ministers that may necessarily need to be moved for whatever reason. I think, yes, it was a challenging ministry. Yes, I think she did a good job in managing it in the first year. And I think the only reason that there's a lot of discussion and so forth about her as opposed to the other three ministers is because of the history behind her in the past. I think if you really examine her performance in the ministry, if you really examine the success that she's been able to accomplish, Mr. Monroe, in terms of assisting people with the roofing programs, with the various assistance with mothers, and she spoke to those things again, if Monroe was listening to the budget debate. I would think that the Prime Minister's decision to move her would have been purely a discretionary decision, and thought that she would be able to bring those leadership skills and her commitment to public service and helping people to the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture. And as a young lady, I think she would do well in youth, sports and culture, and I wish them all the very best, and I think they'll all do well.
Gentlemen, we have to take a break. We have our final segment right after this. The Minister administration shuffling the deck is our topic tonight. We're back right after this.
Hi, I'm here to tell you about the fastest way to purchase the vehicle you want right from home.
With SBT Japan, we import used cars from Japan straight to you.
Car ownership doesn't have to be hard. Go to svtjapan.com and sign up for free. Search for the car you want, place your order, and make a payment using any one of our convenient payment options. Once you pay the duty and tax to our in-house broker, we will clear the vehicle and even deliver it straight to your home. Sounds too easy? Well, shouldn't it be?
Welcome back to On the Record. This is our final segment in this episode. Our topic tonight is the Minister administration shuffling the deck. We continue now with our guest. Don, you started to allude to it at the top of the show. How are things in Tall Pines since taking office? Have you gotten anything accomplished in your constituency?
Definitely. One of the promises I made to the people of Tall Pines is that we definitely will have a constituency office open, number 1. So we have to.
That's a promise. I thought
no,
that
was
should happen automatically.
Well, it should have happened automatically.
Don't y'all get a constituency allowance?
Yeah, but
that?
it should have happened. The question is, was it happening before? It wasn't. So we got that on order. We also started a community center that has a homework center, a computer lab, and rooms for meetings and so forth. So we have the community center that was delivered. We have certain we have programs and projects we've done. Vast cleaning ups in various areas, communities in Tall Pines. But one of the key issues is the issue with the landfill. Yes, I know that was priority for me. I told them that I would make that my priority, and I'm happy to report that, and I think the minister have already reported publicly that a company has been selected to take over the management of the landfill. We are confident that that company will be able to not only manage the landfill, but they would bring expertise to make sure that the landfill is managed as like a modern landfill.
So managed meaning no more dump fires?
Well, no one can say no more dump fires, but if you put in place the right company, the right procedures and expertise, then you should eliminate it or reduce it tremendously. I don't want to say no, but the goal is none. No dump fires. So I'm happy to say that we've been able to put pressure on the ministry and in the right way, and we are now at the point where a company is being selected, so we should have that behind us. And so we've been able to do, as I said, projects, educational projects, get some young people involved in some training for business, entrepreneurial skills, have some young people assist them educationally, assisting the school there, Garventine's Primary School, with some stuff to help them in their educational needs. We've done obviously the regular programs that one would expect, back to school, Christmas, etc. But our next move this year is to really continue in an organization of our associations in the various communities, community association, the marry with the National Crime Watch Association initiative. So we have helped several associations develop, so we want to build on that. Project on hand right now, Jerome, is that we've ordered several parks. There's several parks in Tall Pines in various communities. Strawn Hill, we've already purchased the park that we're going to develop there. Victoria Gardens, we have already ordered the park that we're going to develop there. Doris Johnson Estate, we've ordered some equipment to develop a park there. Good things.
Okay.
Doing my best.
The only reason I give you that, is because I beat you up for not coming on a show one time and you're supposed to come and didn't come. So that's where you get. I give you a little opportunity to talk about what you're doing. So we even now, right?
Even. This is
good. All right.
I love to be here too.
Good. Next time, don't stand me up now. I boot you up and show up.
Sometimes.
I don't get yourself in no problem. Just say okay. But I brought that up too to say, are we as a people? Do you find that constituents are overly dependent on their MPs for making things happen within the communities? I mean, you talked about the things that are going on, and this is really to both of you. And it seems that a lot of times that residents will look to the MP for everything. If I remember that, this. Remember the family dies and I don't have enough money to bury them, I got to call the MP. If something goes wrong in the area, I have to call the MP.
Well, if my learned seeing you would allow me to just piggyback on what I said. That's the reality. Unfortunately, Jerome, the culture of politics in the Bahamas, and I blame respectfully my forefathers in politics for this.
You don't have to respectfully blame them.
No,
you need to blame them.
Because we have cultivated a culture of political dependency in our communities. People expect you to help them with phone to expect, and you help as much as you can, because we all help as much as we can. And this is why I've always been a strong proponent for local government in New Providence, because local government, some of the things that, like I talk about the parks that we're now developing, I talk about building all these associations and crime watch associations. If you have a structured local government in New Providence, some of those duties and responsibilities that we now see MPs doing, that would be shifted to local government representative, and MPs would be more focused on legislative responsibilities, et cetera, right? In other systems, you have local government councillors being more hands-on in projects within the communities. Yes, they work with the MP. Yes, they work with the MP in making sure funding is there, structures is there from the federal government or the central government, as we say in the Bahamas. But if we develop our local government, you have an opportunity where MPs will be able to really focus on their legislative responsibilities, really holding the government's feet to the fire in terms of fiscal policies, social policies, and making sure right legislation is in place.
Very quickly, you agree? You think something like that can work?
I don't believe in adding another level of bureaucracy for the central government to have an excuse for why things aren't properly resourced. The reason that constituents look to the MP is because this is the man who they've sent to represent himself, to represent them. So when the people in Strawn's Alley say, look, we've been trying to get a drain for ages and ages and ages, we've been writing, we've been calling, when the people in Oak Rail say we've been trying to get this hotel that caught a fire demolished because it's a hazard, and they haven't had a result, then they come to the MP.
That's a different argument.
Insofar as funerals and that go,
yeah, that's what he's talking about.
As far as I am concerned, the persons who come and look for assistance from me are the people who give their time free to me. I look at it like this. If you have somebody who could have been on a hustle to make some money, and they took their time from their hustle to help you, and now they need some resources, if you have a way of accessing it and helping them, then that's fair play. I've not met anyone in Freetown that's been unreasonable in making demands on me. And maybe, the bottom line is this: if I have somebody who I overly tax, who I work for free, I can't have a conscience if something then arises with them and I have the ability to assist, and I don't assist because these people have made a choice.
But Jerome, that isn't the point, though. I respect his view, right? But I think I agree with him. I help people every day. But the point is that I think we're looking at it in a bigger picture than what he's looking at it. We're talking about the fact that we want our MPs to be focused on what they should be focused on and to help persons as much as they can, which we do. And so I'm not saying that anyone in Torpine shouldn't be able to come to me and say, don't I need assistance, and I'd be able to direct them where they need to be directed. But I'm saying the culture has to change in the Bahamas.
Point taken. Point taken. Gentlemen, we are going to end the show with what we've introduced called a lightning round, just a yes or no to the questions. If you can't answer it, say no answer, then we move on. There's a few questions. No. I mean, if you don't answer it, we move forward. But I have some specific questions I want to throw at you. Yes or no? If you don't answer, then we move forward. Mr. Monroe, do you see yourself as leader of the opposition one day?
No.
No. Okay. Saunders, is being deputy leader in the House of Assembly fulfilling enough for you?
Deputy Speaker.
Speaker.
I love the job. I'd like to do some other things.
Yes or no, man? Is the deputy speaker of the House fulfilling enough?
I'm happy where I am.
Okay, all right, we'll go with that. Mr.
Want
Monroe,
to move on, though.
Do you wholeheartedly support the PLP and its style of leadership?
No, I don't wholeheartedly support anything.
Mr. Saunders.
Other than God.
Do you fully support the leadership style of Hubert Minnis?
I support my leader.
Yeah, that's a yes. Okay. Mr. Monroe, do you believe the PLP is guilty of governmental corruption in its ranks?
No.
Mr. Saunders, is the FNM still stuck on the Hubert Ingram style of leadership?
No.
No. Gentlemen, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It was painless. Thank you so much for coming on this evening. We have had a fantastic discussion. I appreciate you taking time out to come and talk to us tonight. We always appreciate a lively debate. We appreciate you coming on, and certainly we will seek to have you on again sometime in the future. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
We certainly hope that you have enjoyed our show tonight. Special thanks to our guests, Wayne Monroe and Don Saunders, my producer and technical staff, and of course you, our audience, for watching. I would like to make a plug here. Our show is nominated for an Icon Award. The awards will be held this weekend. Hopefully On the Record will emerge. If not, we appreciate the nomination, and thank you so much for those of you who supported our nomination. Certainly has been a good time for us, and we appreciate your viewership. We thank you to the Icon Committee as well for considering the nomination. On behalf of all of us here, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time right here on The Record.